Sports Podcast with your hosts Dan Steinbach and Ian Hatcher.
Welcome to the 3304 Sports Podcast. I'm Daniel Steinbach. Joined alongside me is Ian Hatcher. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. We get to talk about some things I'm thankful for, some things I'm not too thankful for, and I'm very opinionated, so I got a lot to say.
Oh, brother, so am I. So, Ian kind of just gave you the gist of what we're doing. It's the holiday season. We're recording. It's the 1st of December on recording day here. We just got wrapped up with Thanksgiving last week. We're jumping into December now. You're worried about getting your gifts for your friends and family. And then the new year is coming around, 2021, right around the corner. 31 days to go in this, roller coaster, for lack of a
Not that
better
anyone
word,
would be counting.
No, of course not. Who's counting for, the end of this year? It's been an interesting one. I'll put it at that. So, as Ian said, we're going to kind of have a hodgepodge here, a little melting pot of the holiday season. We're going to start off, we're going to jump back a week. You guys were just spending Thanksgiving with your loved ones, however you were doing it. So we're going to hop into some things that we were thankful for. Then we're going to get into the giving season, whether you celebrate Christmas or some other holiday. You spend time with your family, you enjoy. You're giving gifts. There are things you want. So we're going to have a wish list. We're also going to have a little, Santa's naughty list for sports. This is all going to be pertaining to sports and the sports world. And then at the end, we're going to hop into the new year. We always want to have our New Year's resolutions, whether or not we, succeed in them after January. But, we're going to have some sports resolutions. And this is all going to be from the perspective of us as, spectators, as fans, just enjoyers of sports that we are. All right, Ian, let's hop in. We've got Thanksgiving, had a, good meal last week, watch some football, everything you do on Thanksgiving, whatever you do. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving with your family, however you celebrated it, as well as people out in listener land. So I want to, when you're going around the Thanksgiving table, you want to read off some things that you're thankful for. Ian, what were you thankful for this year?
This year, the biggest thing that I think that I've been thankful for is just all the sacrifices that players and organizations made to keep sports on. I can't imagine what a monumental task that must have been, organizing that in a pandemic. But my hat goes off to every single organization. Some have handled it better, some have handled it worse. I mean, we're seeing some messes in some sports, but either way, either way, the players and the organizations had to make immense sacrifices. The bottom line is going to look nothing like it normally would, but just for the people to do that, it really showed me that, they're not what a lot of people make them out to be. Like, yeah, they should do that. They get paid $40 million. What? Like, how are you not going to play? It's like, well, they put their own safety, their family safety at risk just by doing that. So for them to just come together and do that, especially when we saw it collectively among the NBA and the bubble and the NFL with the minimal amount of opt-outs that we saw, it just, to me, it really said something to me, and I'm very thankful for that.
Dude, I totally agree. I personally left that off my list because I had a feeling it was going to be on yours, but there's no question. The number one thing overall when it pertains to sports, if you're thankful for, is that we even have them to begin with. Leagues, they put on delayed all the way back in, the beginning of the season, February, March, all the chaos is going on. The fact that we are here, we're at the end of the season, we were able to have an MLB season, an NHL season, NBA bubble. We're in the middle of watching football as the playoffs are coming. We have all the college sports, for the fall and winter seasons. That across the line is by far the thing that I would agree with on what we're thankful for, that we're even in this position to begin with.
Absolutely.
So a couple of things that I would say that I'm thankful for. These are a little smaller ones. I'm thankful, number one, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. This dude is by far and away the best commissioner in at least American professional sports. I don't know how they're doing it overseas with all their football leagues and, all the soccer over there. But Adam Silver has killed it. The NBA bubble was a massive success. It totally felt real. The playoff atmosphere, it was right on. He listens to players. That's the thing. He's a commissioner that is able to gauge both the owner side, because the commissioners only work on behest of the owners. But the fact that he is able, and the NBA is a star-driven league. We know that. It's been like that for at least the last 10 years. But the fact that you have these players that in a summer, surrounding
their off-season.
Obviously the pandemic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A great offseason too. We just had the draft. We had free agency. Everything was going smoothly. We're going to have the season start at the end of this month. I think they're going to have a couple preseason games, to warm up. We don't know how many players will be playing right away. I know that there's some, stories surrounding guys like LeBron and AD about, are they going to play at the start of the season? But the fact that he listens to players, the NBA bubble was such a success. The fact that they just so smoothly were able to handle, all the player protests of social justice, and that he listens to them. He understands what they want. He understands what the fans want. He is just by far and away the best commissioner in sports, in my opinion. And it's so good that we have him, because he is really, the NBA under him has really exploded.
Yes. Yeah, I say it louder. I love Adam Silver. And I just also think about the transition from David Stern to Adam Silver, how seamless it was. It never even just seemed in jeopardy of who would replace David Stern. I mean, I'm sure that they had their eye on Adam Silver for a long, long time, and I can absolutely see why. He is everything you would want. I love that you touched on his ability to, figure out what the players want and take their wants and needs into account as well, because that is something that is obviously of the utmost importance, because without the players, you can't put on your show. So for him to be able to orchestrate something of that magnitude and have it go off without a hitch, a positive test, anything, was absolutely stunning. And I'm with you. I enjoyed the bubble. I'd say almost more than a regular basketball experience, just because it just felt like this open gym run between some of the best athletes in the world. And that was just awesome to see. We got to hear some great on-court banter. It was just awesome for a lot of different reasons. And you're right. We owe all of that thanks to Adam Silver.
Yeah, I know that TJ Warren definitely liked the NBA bubble. That dude was just putting up buckets out of nowhere. But so yeah, Adam Silver, shout out to him. I think this is one, Ian, you and I can definitely agree on. How about Virginia Tech men's basketball head coach Mike Young? This dude is he's legit. He is a legit coach across all of college basketball at this point. I mean, he's put the Virginia Tech Hokies on the map. In the first week of his second season, there's a pandemic. There's all of this craziness going on. After his first year, he has them ranked. He has another top 5 win on a neutral court. I mean, the fact that he had such a good team last year in terms of young freshman talent that he's bringing in, mixed in with some veterans. He brings in a bunch of transfers. This is a really deep team. Going into this season, I am thinking, okay, it's his second year. As of now, with my expectations for Mike Young as a fan, I'm thinking, all right, look at what Buzz Williams did here. And then, I think the first year was better for Mike Young than the first year was for Buzz Williams. And then Buzz Williams' second year, I believe they make the NIT. So I'm thinking going into this year, all right, he's got a really deep team. It's still pretty young. Some of these guys, maybe they're not growing into their full potential yet. Maybe the lineups are a little hard for him to manage, and they make the NIT this year. They just miss out on the tournament again. This looks like he is handling this team beautifully. This roster is so talented with a bunch of guys, and he is making it work. These transfers that he brought in, Kemi Aluma, I knew, going from last year, okay, this team needs a big. This team needs an experienced big. This is a guy that he had to Wofford. This dude just got ACC Player of the Week.
I mean, how was he ever on Wofford's roster? I mean, and not to discredit anything that he was doing at Wofford, but Keith Aluma seems destined to be a Power 5 player. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know how he ever wasn't. He's just so talented. I just had to say that. Go ahead.
So talented. Cordell Pemsel off the bench, the big man from Iowa that he brought in the transfer portal. Like, that's another guy with size. We haven't even seen John Ogiaco yet. And then we're recording this on a Tuesday, so we have a Thursday game against VMI. Jalen Cohen's going to come back. And then you have Cartier Jara mixed with all the other players last year. You know, Beatty's looking better. He's got a consistent jump shot. He's making some more buckets from outside. Tyrese Radford can shoot threes now. Yeah. Tyrese Radford can shoot threes now. That's great. So, yeah, big shout out to Mike Young. Love having him here. He is just incredible. He loves the fans. He loves it here. It's just really sad that we are not going to be in Castle this season to watch this team play because there's something special. There's something special happening here, and I'm really glad that I'm here for it.
Absolutely. I think my only question about him coming to Virginia Tech was I just wondered, could he make the recruiting jump? And not only has he shown that, securing 2 top 100 ESPN players already in his first class, but he's also shown his ability to secure talent through the transfer portal. And that's probably the biggest thing, because when you talk about a team trying to win now, that's the fastest way to win now, is getting players that are immediately ready to contribute. And, you know, even as good as some freshmen can be, you really don't know what you can get from them year one. So the fact that we have all these players that are transferred in and are making impacts right away. I want to touch on one more that you didn't, Justin Mutz. The Swiss Army knife does really everything, and he doesn't do anything insanely well, but he does everything really good. And that's when you have a player like that, he doesn't need to shoot a bunch of shots to get into double digits or make an impact in the game. Those are the kind of players, those glue guys, make the huge impact. You touched on Pemsel as well. A really big body, really, really strong, come in and can spell a guy like Kivaluma or Ogiaco. So I really, really love what he's building.
Yeah, man, this team is just so likable. And I think Mike Young gets a lot of credit for that. All right. So one last thing that I'm thankful for, and you're going to probably disagree with this one, but it's because I'm a Cowboys fan. I am so watching this team, man, I am so thankful for Dak Prescott. Oh, my goodness. Like, the first few weeks of the season, they weren't winning a lot of games. The defense was bad. The defense has gotten better. But Dak with this offense, everything was clicking, and then he gets hurt, terrible injury, and then it's just a slog to the finish line. Now, I will touch on this a little more in my wish list later, so I won't spoil too much, but I'm just a little glad that they're losing. All right, so I think that's good for our Thanksgiving season. We're moving into December now. Ian, what do you you know what? I think I kind of want to take this the negative route. In my opinion, it's always fun to be negative in sports. So how about you? Do you want to take – what direction you want to go in? Do you want to start off with who's on Santa's sports naughty list, or do you want to go into what you're wishing for either for the end of the season for sports or going into next year?
I'll start with the wish list, because I know the naughty list is probably going to boil my blood a little bit. So let me just stay calm for now. I know you got something with your Cowboys you want to touch on here in the wish list, but I have something about my Philadelphia Eagles in the wish list here. And the only thing that I really, really put for it is I am really wishing for this top 10 draft pick. Just watching this team week in and week out, the lack of talent across the board or just aging talent is really becoming apparent. And this team, it's obvious to me now at this point, there's no quick fix. It almost needs to be I don't want to say a rebuild, but it needs to be a renovation at least, because there are holes on this roster, and you can't, fix all of them with one top 10 pick. But at least at that point in the draft, I have the most faith that the Eagles won't screw it up. So for that reason, I am absolutely wishing for a top 10 pick for the Eagles. I want them to take all the thinking out of it and pick exactly who everyone has penciled into us, because the last time we saw a player of that nature, it was Justin Jefferson. In every mock draft, he seemed a lock to be a Philadelphia Eagle. And draft day, we we take Jalen Reagor, and I think Jalen Reagor is still a fine player, but you can't look at the impact that Justin Jefferson has made and not wish that guy was on your team. So for us, I just think whatever position we decide to attack, I think we can get an instant upgrade at that selection at that point in the draft. So I'm just praying, please don't win any more games. And also Jalen Hurts time, please. Oh my Lord.
Ooh, okay. So you're a Jalen Hurts guy. All right.
I'm not I'm not a Jalen Hurts guy, but I'm a huge Carson Wentz fan. Like I've been probably the biggest Carson believer, but I can't make any more excuses for him. I can't do anything. He just looks awful. And you can't, if you drafted a guy in the second round, you have to play him. I mean, especially that's why you have a backup quarterback for when they get injured or play like this. I mean, it's Hurts time.
Now, this is something that I have. You know what? I'll do a quick spoiler. On my naughty list, I have the whole NFC East. That's just it's just garbage. It's just utter garbage. Now, it's interesting that you said that, because on my wish list, I have the Dallas Cowboys losing. I want the Dallas Cowboys to lose every single one of their games because I want that top 5 pick.
Yes.
Because you have no idea how frustrating it was. Looking at, I wasn't able to watch all the rest of the game. When I check my phone and I see final score, Cowboys 31, Vikings 28, I was like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just why are you winning? You don't want to make the playoffs and ruin your chance. You don't want to keep falling, because for me, it's not even about getting up in the top 5 for one of these like can't miss guys, because we can talk NFL draft. I've been thinking about it nonstop for the past couple of months. But for me, the guys at the top of the draft, there's like 4, in my opinion, the top 5 picks should probably be Penei Sewell, offensive tackle out of Oregon, and 4 quarterbacks. That's what I think. That's what I think are the most important players in this draft. You can't miss them. And if you're in that top 5, that means you're going to have people behind you. You're going to have teams behind you vying to move up and trade you valuable picks that you can move down, still get a good player somewhere around the top 10, top 15 that help your defense. And then you get all that draft capital back end of the draft, more into the middle rounds where you're still finding good quality players. So yeah, I want the Cowboys to just lose. And it's interesting that you say that for the Eagles, because right now I think they're at 6th overall in the draft if the season ended today. So yeah, it's interesting that we have 2 of the same mindset, because I can't, you know who I can't stand? I can't stand the fans that are like, that just don't. I get it. It's crazy to be like, yeah, I want my favorite team to lose. On the outside, yes, that just sounds crazy. But when you think about it, in the long haul, you're still rooting for their success. You just know that there's a simpler path. The Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles are not winning the Super Bowl this year. And in my opinion, if you're not a young team that's improving, or you're not a Super Bowl contender, you should be trying to get a higher draft pick. That's just far out. That's just my opinion.
I feel the exact same way. And I just want to touch on this real quick. I have a nephew who's a Washington football team fan, formerly the Redskins. And he wants nothing more for the Washington football team to be the team to make it out of the NFC East. And I don't really have the heart to just tell him just yet that for the football team, that would be the worst thing for you to make the playoffs. You're talking about a draft slot that's going to be difference in 15 to almost 20 spots. And for that team that, I mean, they're missing a quarterback, a few other skill position players. Outside of that, I really do think that the Washington football team is in a really good position for success, and it's just going to come down to that quarterback. Good luck finding that guy at 24 in the first round. Like, it's just not going to happen for you, because like you said, all these quarterbacks are going to fly off the board so early. And for a team like the Cowboys and the Eagles that probably aren't going to be looking in that direction, it only makes whatever pick we may get more valuable, because it's essentially 4 spots higher.
Exactly. Now, and this is what I'll tell you. Honestly, I hope that Washington makes the playoffs, and here's why. Because they would be in prime position for one of those quarterbacks. You know who scares me most on the Washington football team? Zach Wilson out of BYU. I love this guy. Probably, I'm probably near the top of the Zach Wilson fan list in terms of NFL draft junkies. Like, this dude out of BYU looks totally legit. And I know that everyone is like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. Okay, who's quarterbacks 3 through 6? Because I think that there's 6 guys that can go in the first round. I think Zach Wilson is closer to Justin Fields than he is to quarterback number 4. That's just my opinion. I think he is totally legit. Him with Terry McLaurin, like the Washington offense with a quarterback mixed with that front 7 on defense, like all those first round picks they have on the defensive line, like that scares me as a Cowboys fan, having to play him for another 10 years.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I say
McLaurin looks legit.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I told you that the reason that I am also hoping that the Washington football team makes the playoffs is because I don't want them getting one of those quarterbacks, because I really do think that that's the one thing that they're missing. And obviously, if they, answer that question, it makes life hell for teams like the Eagles and the Cowboys. So obviously, I don't want to see that, but it'll be interesting.
I want to guess you want to see the Eagles in the position to take Jamar Chase.
I would really, really like Jamar Chase. I'm really kind of got my sights set on Micah Parsons, though. Stay in state,
you want the
Penn
linebacker.
State. Yeah, I think that everybody tries to make it out to be our secondary, and our secondary does need help. But I just think we've passed on linebackers and shown that we don't give a damn about linebackers for so long. And it just really shows when you watch a game. We don't have anybody that just seems to be all over the field making plays for us on the defensive side of the ball. We don't really have a captain ever since Malcolm Jenkins left. So I think if we could find that next defensive captain, I think that would be huge for us.
Yeah, I've got my eyes set on Caleb Farley. Obviously, our listeners are very familiar with him, not just because I'm a Virginia Tech fan. I mean, that's part of it. It's bias. But it's kind of in my mold of trade back and then take him, because in my opinion, if you're in the top 5, I really like Caleb Farley. I think he's going to be a really good NFL player. I don't know if he's going to be the Jalen Ramsey type that can just straight up impact the game. And overall, even if he is Jalen Ramsey, cornerbacks just don't lead your team as much as, you hope that they do.
Yeah.
For me, it's really good to have a lockdown guy, and it's really why I'm mad that they let go of Byron Jones. But, cornerback, like a top cornerback for me is priority, probably like number 6 in terms of position group, because you got your quarterback, you got your defensive ends, you got your tackles, your offensive line in general, maybe your wide receiver group. And then maybe I think you start to really focus on cornerbacks. But if you can get a surplus of picks by trading down and then taking, one of those top corners off the board, that really helps your team going forward in the future. And absolutely. I wanted to get to this just real quick because we were both talking about tanking. I was watching, I think it was Jags. Who were the Jags just playing this past weekend?
The Steelers.
Right. So they were playing the Steelers, and I think they threw a touchdown. I think there was a touchdown play for the Jags, and I'm looking on Jaguar social media, and I'm scrolling through their comments, and I see someone say, this team losing isn't going to fix this team. Only winning is going to fix this team. I'm like, dude, you're playing Mike Glennon right now.
Yeah.
If
there's anyone out there that thinks that what is currently in Jacksonville is a winning core, they are delusional and they need some help.
Highly. Could not agree with you more. All right, let's move on. We can talk about football for hours. What else you got on your wish list?
The last thing that I have on my wish list is just health in the upcoming NBA season. I think that's the one place that we haven't really been able to figure out with this new landscape is how do we really keep players healthy? I know that the off-season regiments are so wonky and virtual and nowhere near what they normally are, and so players aren't getting the same kind of conditioning that they normally would. And I know they're professional athletes and they probably do some of that on their own, but I think we kind of discredit how much, just regular practice does for these guys. I mean, they are just people too. So, I mean, I really want this should just be a healthy season. I know we're never going to get a fully healthy season. We've already lost Klay Thompson for the year, tragically again. So, but I'm hoping that we don't see anything really, really crazy, because I am kind of worried about that. Similar things like we were worried about going into the bubble, these soft tissue injuries, the increased propensity to, tear a muscle or tweak a muscle or something like that. And when you're talking about NBA players, I guarantee you, if you're talented, you're not stepping back on the court until you're 100%. And so, I mean, you were talking about Kawhi hamstring could mean him missing 40 games this year, and that's something that I don't really want to see. And I'm just hoping that I'm just wishing that all these players can stay healthy this season.
Yeah, I think good health for players in all leagues is definitely something that everyone wants to see, because you never want to see a season ruined by injuries. I mean, look at the NFL. The NFL, they lost the preseason, and this is surprising to me because I have never really seen the point of a preseason other than get some snaps for your rookies and depth guys. But no, it's real.
Yeah.
Having lost OTAs and all that and preseason games, I mean, Saquon's down. Chris McCaffrey's was been banged up all season. Guys like Courtland Sutton. The list goes on. Just a ton of injuries in the NFL this year.
Star-studded guys, and especially in football, because you're talking about in football where an injury at one single position could be make or break for your season. And I'm obviously talking about the quarterback position. So we've seen that position ravaged. We've seen every position group ravaged in the NFL. And the only reason I didn't say anything about the NFL is because I feel like they're already, so far in, and I feel like there's no real hope in, hoping that we don't see any more injuries, because it just feels like a foregone conclusion. We're going to lose 5 guys for the season each week. And it is really sad, but it's like you said, it seems to be these preseason games and OTAs and everything that didn't happen this year kind of catching up.
Right. All right. For the last 2 spots on my wish list, I'm going to go a little Detroit on our listeners. I don't know how much of these situations you understand, but first of all, I hope we get a full MLB season. I hope that, we're able to get, even if we don't get a full spring training, I want us to get as closer to 162 games. I'm against 162 games to begin with. I think it drives fans away because it's just way too long. But
yeah,
if we can get closer to that rather than the 60-game sprint, which honestly I had a little bit of fun with this year, I think that'll be great. Now, I'm from Metro Detroit. I'm here right now. It snowed outside today. I know it's snowing back in Blacksburg. So hopefully you guys are enjoying that weather in listener land or wherever you are. Hopefully there's snow. Get you ready for the holiday season. But for my Detroit Tigers, I hope that new number 1 pick, Spencer Torkelson, and number 5 overall pick, Riley Green, from 2 years ago, both make the September call-ups. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of hope, but we brought in all these new young players, and they came in the middle of last season. And it's just some excitement for a team that's been at the bottom of the basement in the MLB. And, they were having some success. They won the AL Central a bunch of times early in the 2010s, made the World Series in 2012, and then have just kind of collapsed after all those great teams. And now you have all the young up-and-comers. You want to see what they can do. Obviously, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, really talented guys, picked them near the top of the draft for a reason. Hopefully they can get those fresh bats in. And then this is just a nitpick, but I need the Detroit Pistons to make a good jersey. These guys have, in my opinion, like the worst style in the NBA. The logo is just bland. Like, it's a basketball, and I know that a lot of teams have basketballs, but they look just better than the Detroit Pistons logo. And the color scheme is just, in my opinion, really boring. It's a boring red. It's a boring blue. Bring back the horse. If you know what I'm talking about, it's the Grant Hill era. Bring back those teal jerseys. I've got one, just a Grant Hill teal jersey, because it looked cool. It was different. It was something. Yeah, it was more 90s, but you can just bring in something. Give the team some more life. You're trying to go for a full rebuild. You got a new GM. Well, I might just make a quick audible and throw a thankful for Troy Weaver, new Detroit Pistons GM. This dude is just wheeling and dealing. If you have Adrian Wojnarowski's updates on every other couple days, it's Detroit Pistons do this, and you're like, man, this dude Troy Weaver is just on the phones constantly. But yeah, there's some new excitement around the franchise for me as a fan. So it'd be good to see them, bring in a new look. I don't know if you can touch on any of that, Ian, but that's just me personally as a Detroit fan.
Well, I was just going to say, for one, you are welcome for Troy Weaver. He came from my Oklahoma City Thunder. He had a really good GM to learn from.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But, and I also wanted to say, I absolutely just loved the year Pistons draft. And I think that the Pistons are I think you guys finally have a path, and I think things are really looking up. For one, you guys got one of my favorite players in the draft, Killian Hayes. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I think if he would have played, uh, you know, in the United States, he would have been in consideration for the number 1 overall pick, but it doesn't happen like that. And you guys got a really, really good one.
No, I agree. It's good to finally have a franchise on a path. You know, they were just kind of slogging along. You know, they keep trying to make the playoffs, but they end up with like the 12th overall pick. It's like, that's not going to help you.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
this is a
stuck in
team
no
that
man's
now,
land.
exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it's like now, you know, you're trying to. It's very clear. He blew up this roster. I don't think Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose are going to be here long. I think this is a team that is going to try to put out a team that is going to lose, but you're going to play your young players. See what you can get in that top 4 next year, you know, for one of these really talented players, and just keep going on. This wasn't like, in my opinion, I don't think there was an MVP or an All NBA caliber player in there, but there were some really good players. There were definitely some All Stars in this at the top of this draft. I don't know if Killian Hayes is going to be that, but it's nice to have a young player, you know, to bank your future on. And let me tell you, I didn't know you were an Oklahoma City Thunder fan. Sam Presti is playing 2K Trade Finder. Like,
Yeah.
all right,
Oh,
I'm going to put this guy
word.
up, and then I'm going to just cycle through which trade offer gives me the most first-round picks. Dude, it's ridiculous. And I love the memes that are like, hey, it's NBA Draft Lottery night. Let's see which route, how many Thunder picks we have in a row. I think what he's doing is brilliant.
It's exactly what we were talking about earlier. You know, if you don't legitimately have a chance at competing for a championship, there's no reason to waste anybody's time. And kind of like the Pistons or a team like the Wizards or any one of those teams that just middle around 500 or, you know, between 8 games above or below for like years, that will happen. And it'll just keep happening because you don't put yourself in a position to get a better player through the draft. And you're really probably already tied with the players that you have to make a big splash in free agency. So your hands are tied. And, I mean, you have no choice but to re-sign this guy that, like a John Wall or a Blake Griffin, you know, just guys like that won't put you over the edge, but you don't have anything that you could possibly replace him with because you don't have a draft pick capable of doing that. So for teams like that, I think it's the obvious move is to just blow it up, or try again. And especially if you're in a small market like a Detroit or like an Oklahoma City, those are the things you have to do just to stay competitive and stay relevant. So I love what we're doing. It does suck a little bit as a fan to see us, you know, trade for a pick in 2027. And you're like,
you're trading for 6th graders.
Yeah, like what? But I know one day it'll pay off, and that's all that really matters, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully Sam Presti has a little more success than Danny Ainge in Boston. Can I just say, I thought of this now for a little while. Remember, I think, what was that? 2013, the Brooklyn, like the infamous
Yes.
Brooklyn trade where they traded all those picks for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and we were like, oh, now the Nets suck and Boston has all their picks, and now the Nets, you know, have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and are arguably in a better position than the Boston Celtics because Danny Ainge blew all those picks and didn't make the big splash moves that he wanted to with all those assets. It's if I was a Boston Celtics fan, I'd be very, very frustrated. So hopefully it goes better for your Thunder with Sam Presti. All right, now it's fun time. We're going to talk about the things that we hated. So why don't you begin on your Santa Sports naughty list for this year?
All right. Well, I don't see any reasonable place to start other than Virginia Tech football. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, there were expectations. We had an opt-out with Caleb Farley, but he was, I'd say, easily our best player. But there was still optimism. I mean, you talk about that position group in particular. You look at Jermaine Waller. We still have him. And Chapman and a couple other guys capable of stepping up, Breon Murray, to name just a couple. And you're like, okay, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. But then the season begins. And to me, the real reason why they deserve to be on the naughty list is just the false hope that we were given at the beginning of the season. I mean, Khalil Herbert was a Heisman Trophy candidate. Top 3 probably 3 or 4 weeks into the season. I mean, he was unstoppable. And now it just seems like a couple injuries here and there, and we don't even know how to play football anymore, and we're getting dragged through the mud. And it is absolutely just terrible. It makes me want to rip my hair out. Virginia Tech especially, I mean, we'll have a bad year, but by our standards, a bad year might be 6-6. I mean, a bad year isn't supposed to be this, and especially for a head coach that it feels like we're waiting on him to that's my thing. I always wait with the head coach because I want to see what they can do when they have their players and their system in place. And Fuente has had more than enough time to be able to implement that. And I get he's had a couple of tough breaks here and there, but this is his roster. I mean, and the only thing that he's proven that he could do so far is win with the roster that he was handed when he first got here. So it just feels like it's been a regression year in and year out from Justin Fuente. And there's been murmurs about his job security, and I think that it's about time that Virginia Tech football presses the panic button. It worries me a little bit about letting go of Fuente because I think there's a bigger problem that lies in Virginia Tech football, and it's just that we don't want to spend the money to be a top 25 powerhouse. And it's a sad reality, but I don't think we could probably do better than Fuente with the money that we're going to try and spend on a head coach. And the only opportunity that I really see for us is a Shane Beamer, but it seems like he's pointing to USC, South Carolina, that is. And I wouldn't blame him at all if he didn't want to try and live up to, his father's reputation at this school that he put on the map. So I absolutely get that, but it seems like the only real hope we have lies in him or maybe a Justin Hamilton. But it seems like Virginia Tech is about to enter some dark days for the first time in a while.
Yeah, this season has definitely been frustrating to watch, and obviously there's those talks. All I'll say on Virginia Tech football is we're recording on December 1st. Last night it was announced that College Game Day would be going to Coastal Carolina. I am very thankful that they will not be coming to Blacksburg for the Clemson game and, just shine that spotlight brighter. I mean, it's still in prime time on ABC. Millions of people are still going to watch this team who's favored to lose by, as of now, I think 22 points. Maybe they can cover. Good teams win, great teams cover. So we'll see what happens about that. I remember, I remember thinking, it was early on in the season, and after Clemson just obliterated Georgia Tech, the line for the next week was like 40 against Syracuse. And I was like, oh yeah, I think Clemson can totally do that. And then they just didn't. So maybe they're not as mad. Maybe they took out all their anger on Pitt last week and they won't put up 100 on Virginia Tech. Who knows? Maybe we can get like a backdoor cover, have a bad beat for some people out there.
My dream scenario is that the score is far enough out of hand that we can just, gentlemen shake at halftime and just not come back out and just call it at the final, because it could be bad. It just seems like we have no hope. I mean, I actually am just now finding out that Quincy Patterson entered the transfer portal along with two others, Elijah Bowick and Daryl Simmons. So it seems like the transfer portal has been the easiest way for us to lose talent that we have, and it seems like this could be another season of that. So it's not a good time to be out.
Yeah, and it's always a bad sign when you have your players leaving the transfer portal. It could be a sign of things to come. Who knows? Yeah. We're just speculating at this point. What else you got on your naughty list?
My last thing on my naughty list is NFL COVID control.
Yeah, I have this one too.
Yeah,
all right, let's see what you got.
I just think that just in watching the other sports and the guidelines that they created, everybody else kind of had a plan in place, and it seems like the NFL thought that they could just get away with just testing. And if you have COVID, all right, you're not playing, get on the COVID list and contact trace whoever they were in contact with. And it seems like they believe that that's going to be the end-all, cure-all, but we're starting to see that it's not going to work that way. And especially when you're talking about traveling to all these different individual stadiums across the country, it's just a mess. I mean, right now we're talking about a Ravens and Steelers game that's been postponed 3 times. The last time because a tree lighting ceremony took precedence over the game in prime time, so they had to move it up to a 3:40 Eastern time start.
Are you ready for some Wednesday, slightly after afternoon football? I know I am.
I mean, if you're on the West Coast, have a little bit of lunch and watch the game, I guess. But if
Oh
you're on
man,
the
that'd be
East
perfect.
Coast, yeah, if you're on the East Coast, you're just gonna look weird at 3:40 watching football. But I guess, but it just goes to show that it's crazy, and also the double precedents that they set. To me, the Ravens and Steelers got pushed back because of obviously all the COVID problems that the Ravens are having, but the Broncos made them take the field without a single quarterback last week. Every quarterback contact tracing, and I understand that it was a mask problem on the players' end, but still, I mean, it just seems like a mess, and they're only proving that more with these mass amount of fines, warnings, and confiscated draft capital for all these teams. It just is a mess, and I can't think of anything stupider than requiring players now at this point to wear a mask on the sideline right after you get off of a field where you are separated by no space from every single player. I mean, you're trying to hit the other person. So
Right.
I think it's just silly. I don't know what they were thinking. I think they were just looking at getting through this season as if nothing's going on and just, going with the COVID test, but it's a mess.
Well, sir, I certainly think that there's some optics play in there regarding, wearing masks in practice while you're, practicing with your quarterback group. Um, but also when you're talking about like precedents, they're saying, oh, you guys are going to have to be forced, like your team, if you can't handle your COVID situation, forced to forfeit a game, forced to forfeit draft capital. I don't see any of that really happening on a major scale. So it's kind of just feels like empty threats from the NFL and the front offices,
Yeah.
from the executives, like Roger Goodell, who I guess I could put on my naughty list. I think that he's not a good commissioner, although I did enjoy him just falling asleep in his chair on draft night. That was fun to watch. So kudos to him for that. Maybe we should just do that every single year. Just watch Roger Goodell just slowly slip into unconsciousness while he's announcing the Eagles draft pick or whatever. I have no idea.
I fall asleep when we announce our draft pick too, so I'm right there with you.
Oh man. All right, so I put that there, but I also put on my naughty list the NCAA, specifically football and how they've handled COVID. And the
Yeah.
reason that I have the NCAA is because they haven't really done anything, because the NCAA is a facade. Because when it comes to football, it's the Power Five making up their own decisions. And the NCAA is just not the central governing body that I think it needs to be in terms of college sports, especially in terms of football, which is just the king of all kings in college sports.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at the playoff, and I'm going to get to the playoff committee in just a second. This Saturday, Ohio State plays Michigan State. If that game gets canceled because Ohio State has a little bit of problem with COVID, I mean, Ryan Day tested positive. I don't know what's going on in Michigan State, but if there's enough to cancel that game, Ohio State's not competing for the Big Ten championship. Now, I don't know how the playoff committee is going to gauge that, but just think about all the things that are going to happen, like all the cancellations, all the teams that aren't going to be eligible to play. The Pac-12 is only playing 6 games. In my opinion, that alone takes out their teams for playoff consideration, in my personal opinion. But all the cancellations that are happening, all the conference championship games that may or may not be played, you're looking at a really bad situation for our national championship. And it's why a lot of people aren't taking this season seriously. I personally am. You take a look at, you mentioned South Carolina, they fired their head coach. They're taking it seriously. They're thinking, hey, this is a serious season. Everyone's dealing with the same thing. You're not producing. We're getting rid of you in regards to Will Muschamp. So some people are handling it as a serious season. Some people aren't, just because of all, the COVID going on and all the cancellations of games. Men's basketball season is seeing some stuff happen as the pandemic gets worse and worse in this country. Yeah. But yeah, I think the NCAA also has handled COVID like just disastrously, because they aren't that central hub of college sports that I think that they try to claim to be. It's really weird. And I wanted to mention the playoff committee real quick. Earlier I mentioned I was on the Zach Wilson bandwagon. I'm a little bit on the BYU bandwagon. Now, I'm not one of these guys that, is paid by ESPN to go on every night and instantly react to rankings that change every week. But a team like BYU, and I'm just a group of five guy in general, or lesser teams that aren't given the shot.
Yeah.
I want to see these guys go. I wanted to see UCF get into the playoff. I want to see a team like Cincinnati or a team like BYU make it, because that could be box office. Sure, it might be a bad game, but it's always just going to leave that question being unanswered of, hey, what happens when you put a group of five team up against one of these Power Five teams? Because we've seen these group of five teams go into the New Year's Six Bowls, and they pulled off a couple of good wins. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think the playoff committee as a whole, I won't say it's been a disaster, but it's kind of been like this fluid criteria that we see. Again, the rankings are going to be released tonight of recording day, and then they're going to change next week, and they're going to change the week after that, and then we're going to finally get to the playoff, and it's going to be four teams that we can argue about whether or not that fourth team that got in was deserving. I just think the playoff committee personally messed up last week.
Well, and I agree about BYU, especially because, they fit the eye test, especially right now. They have a really, really good quarterback. And I know that, the committee doesn't look at things like that. But to me, it's things like that that really, really give you a chance. And so I think they definitely deserve some consideration, and especially for the fact that of how hard that I don't know if they still are, but I know how hard they were pushing to try and secure another really, really big game. They had an open week. They were trying desperately to try and get it filled. And I think, if I'm right, they almost are kind of deterred based off of where they landed in the first rankings. And it makes me a bit sad, because I'm starting to wonder, what is it going to take for one of these teams to, really get a shot. We're in a year where I can already, see the outcries are going to come at some point about how it's going to need an asterisk because of everything that happened. But to me, that's only more reason to just use this year as a chance. Especially when you have a team that fits the bill, looks the part, they deserve a chance.
Yeah, I personally agree. I'll move on from my naughty list. I'm a Michigander, so this is where this comes in. I was going to mention the Lions, but over the weekend they fired Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, so good on them. So I won't rap on them this time. Maybe later, because they always find a way to mess it up. Jim Harbaugh.
Wow.
Now, I was a born and bred Michigan State fan, so I am very comfortable with Jim Harbaugh staying at Michigan for as long as he likes. But this dude was brought in to win championships, and I'm going to bring this graphic up. If you were watching the Penn State game this past weekend, Michigan is just bad. They're just really, really, really bad. And here we go. Since 2015 season, since Jim Harbaugh was there, record versus Ohio State, 0-5. Record versus Michigan State, 3-3. He just lost to Mel Tucker, who I guess I'll put on my wish list too, or on my thankful for list. In year 0, they're 3-3 against them. Versus ranked teams, they're 11-16. Versus top 10 teams, they're 2-12. And they haven't. And this graphic says Big Ten Championship 0. Forget Big Ten championships. They haven't even gone to the Big Ten championship game. So, if there's a Michigan fan listening in our audience, I'm just sorry. He was brought in. He was promised to be your savior, and he just has wrecked pretty much everything. He's brought it back to what it was before him. And, I think I want to talk about Justin Fuente. And it seems like with every new coach, there's always that first year bump. There's new excitement around the program. The players are, excited about a new coach, a new system, some buy-in. Initially, you have a first year bump. Maybe you have a second year bump. Jim Harbaugh was a game away from the college football playoff in 2016. And then it's just been all downhill. His team looks just awful. They're just bad. He hasn't gotten his quarterback. He's supposed to be like a quarterback whisperer. And at this point, you're talking about him being fired, which for the athletic department would be bad, because all the promises that were made about him coming in are broken, and you're the one that has to fire him. That's not a good look. At this point, I think it's just going to be a mutual parting of ways, and he finds his way back to the NFL maybe. I'm not sure. But Jim Harbaugh definitely goes on the naughty list for me.
And one last, definitely belongs.
Yeah. And one last guy I've got on here, and it's part of the reason why I was thankful for Dak Prescott and sad that he's gone. Naughty list Taysom Hill. And this is why. Now, the first week, I was very fortunate enough in one of my leagues
Yep. I know where this is
to
going.
pick him up and put him in that tight end slot in ESPN. Very thankful for that. I ended up losing that game still, but it was good to have a tight end that could actually produce, because tight ends have been a disaster unless you have Travis Kelce. But the past 2 weeks with Taysom Hill, the playoffs are coming up. I know Drew Brees will probably be back at the last few weeks of the season. Alvin Kamara, his fantasy value has just tanked. He's not catching passes. They're not giving him targets. He's only got 16 points over the last 2 weeks combined. It's bad. It's made me consider benching Alvin Kamara, who's the #1 running back in fantasy this year. So I just can't wait for Taysom Hill to just get out. Just get out, give Drew Brees his spot back, give Alvin Kamara his, 7 catches for 80 yards, and we'll just call it a day. We'll call it a day, and I can be comfortable in both of my fantasy leagues where Alvin Kamara is one of my running backs. And, I can just cruise to a championship. That's all I want. I've been playing fantasy for so long, and Taysom Hill is coming along to try and ruin that because I haven't won a championship ever. So,
Well, you could be me and finish in second place of every single one of your leagues for the last 6 fantasies.
Ooh. How are you looking this year?
This year I am absolutely stacked, but the playoffs are the one game, man. You just got to have one bad week, and that's where it'll get you. And it always happens to me championship week. So, I got fingers crossed. As long as Christian McCaffrey is good to go for the playoffs, I should be good.
Ooh. See, there's an interesting thing I did with him. I'll touch on it. Why not? We got some time. We only got one segment left. I was just wheeling and dealing at the trade deadline, and I came across Christian McCaffrey, and I was able to flip him and turn him into Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. That's just me.
Wow.
I was very fortunate in that. Big upgrades at the quarterback and wide receiver position for me. So I'm happy that I was able to get that done. Hopefully, everything goes well. Hopefully I can, my players can play well.
Yeah.
And we'll make that last second push. I'm one of those guys that if my players play well and help me win a lot of games, I'm one of those guys that is more than willing to donate to the charities of the players, because at the end of the day, it's fantasy football. I think some people have taken it a little too seriously, but if there's a way to make it, a little more real life, you're helping these players with the causes that they have set up. I think that's a perfectly logical way to play fantasy football. Go for the bragging rights, but at the end of the day, if you're going to put some money up, put it up for the players that, helped get you there. I'm more than willing to do that.
That's a really good idea. I'm probably stealing that one from you, just to let you know.
All right. More the merrier, right? All right. So this year, 2020, what should we call it? Can we call it a hellscape? I'll call it that. So let's get to the end of it, and let's go for some New Year's resolutions. What do we want to see in the sports world in 2021? Ian, I'll let you blast off on this last segment.
All right. So I really only have one, but it's kind of a big one for me because I definitely ended up taking it for granted last year, and that's just to enjoy the college basketball season while we have it. I know we're talking about the NCAA in its entirety made your naughty list, and I think it definitely covers the good gist here with college basketball, because the one difference between that and a sport like football is you could afford to be down 12 players due to contact tracing and still put a team on the field. But for basketball, if you have contact tracing really of any variety, you're probably going to get screwed, and that takes your rotation down to, even if it's just 3 players, you go from a 15 to 13-man rotation, and depending on the players, you get really, really iffy at that point. So college basketball, I think, has the biggest chance of really having something drastic happen to it. And we saw last year what happened. We didn't even get March Madness. We didn't get any of the really big moments. We didn't get any of the conference tournaments. So those are really, really huge things in college basketball. And to me, I'm much more on the NBA side, or I favor the NBA game. But to me, that's what I like about college basketball is that I love the talent evaluation. I love all those opportunities. I love trying to, predict as early as I possibly can how the draft is going to slide out, and I love to have my own opinions about how good I think players are, how overrated or underrated I think certain guys are in the draft process. So it's one of my biggest intrigues, and scouting the jump between the college basketball level and the NBA is something I really, really enjoy. And last year, I really took the season for granted. I wasn't on top of it. I wasn't watching many of the prospects. I think it was a little bit to do with a little bit of an underwhelming class of guys, and also the fact that some of the bigger players in the class took their talents elsewhere. But even still, I missed a lot, and it meant watching a lot of game tape. And I don't really like that because I like watching it more in the context of the game. You get to see all the misses, you get to see all the turnovers, you get to see all the silly mistakes that they're not going to show on the highlight reel. So I prefer that a lot more. And I'm going to be sure to not let it slip past me this time. I'm going to definitely enjoy whatever we may get, and I hope we get to have a season. But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be able to say that I got my fill of college basketball while I was on.
Yeah, and dude, college basketball is really, really just a great time. And, you kind of go through it year after year, but especially there's a little bit more, I think, overlap with football this year. Maybe it's just because we're all cooped up inside during the pandemic. But you look at all the non-conference football games that we lost, all those, matchups that we lost early on in the season, Oregon, Ohio State week 2, Virginia Tech, Penn State. I think Texas and LSU were going to play week 2 this year. LSU hasn't been good, but I mean, that's still a pretty marquee matchup.
Yeah.
Basketball is keeping those. And let's talk about some of these matchups that we're getting this week. I mean, tonight we have the Champions Classic, which is always Duke and Michigan State. They're playing tonight. And then you've got Kansas, Kentucky. They're playing tonight. And then let's go to tomorrow. You've got the Jimmy V Classic. You got West Virginia and Gonzaga. And then you've got Illinois, Baylor. That's a top 5 matchup. And then you go to Saturday. You have the top 2 teams in the country just randomly playing on a normal Saturday at 1 o'clock on CBS. Like, that doesn't happen in college football that often. It's non-conference opponents, and it's just the top 2 teams in the country being like, yeah, let's just play each other. You don't see that in college football. It's all these, top teams that want to avoid that loss at the beginning of the season that could hurt their playoff chances. With these teams, it's like they want to play each other. They want to prove they're the best. And then when they get into the field in March, it's like, all right, guys, do or die time. Let's just go. It's really great seeing all these just marquee, just huge matchups in college basketball early on in the season. Then you get into conference play, and that's when the real grind begins. And then, of course, tournament's always fun. And obviously, we hope by then we're able to have that. I think that the bubble approach that they're taking, by the way, it's smart. Playing in one state, I don't hate it.
Absolutely. I love it.
I will probably miss my, 10 p.m. Gonzaga games on True TV, the 1 versus 16 seed, just because they're playing out west. But I'll definitely sacrifice it so we can actually get some March Madness. Or I've been trademarking this. This is trademarked. This is patented. All of it. April Anarchy. If we have to play in April, we're calling it that. You heard it here first. That's what I've been calling it that for months. I've been fully on this train. If this ends up happening, CVS, they owe me royalties. All right. I've got a couple resolutions here for me. I want to get more involved, when we're doing recaps, whether it's for 3004 Sports or whatever I'm doing. Maybe I start doing what some of these professional, guys on sports networks or just on, talk shows. I want to maybe take some notes during games, things that I like to see, get just more involved in the game rather than just watching and rooting for a team. Really dive into that process and, see what players are doing what, just dive more into the diagnostics of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word to describe it, but I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff. Analytics, all of it's great.
Oh, absolutely.
If I could really just dive into that even more, I think that's good. And now here's one that I have consistently been trying to do, I think for years now, but I just never have. There's a couple of sports that I've wanted to get more involved in terms of watching. Golf is one of them. It's not the resolution here, but I've been really getting into a lot more golf, particularly in the second half of this year. Watching weekend tournaments, obviously watching the majors, watching the Masters was just a good time. Seeing it in November was, just crazy. But the fact that we're going to get another one next year is going to be nice. Another one's hockey. Now, I think with hockey with me, it's just the Red Wings have been bad, so I haven't been watching them, and therefore I just haven't been watching hockey. But also, I'll just say this: hockey is horrible in their marketing. I mean, good lord,
Yeah.
you're playing on CNBC. Who's turning on CNBC to watch sports? No, thank you.
Who thinks that
So, yeah.
sports come on CNBC?
Yeah, that's like there was a playoff game that went on an economics channel when you're like, what are you doing? So yeah, I think that they're just bad with their marketing, but I think it's also just a product of the fact that my team isn't good, therefore I'm not watching. But this is what I've been trying to do, and this is because my Twitter feed is just filled with this all the time, and I have no idea what's going on. I gotta find a soccer team. I have to find. I'm not going to, and when I say find a soccer team, I'm not talking MLS because MLS is just not even, I think, a considered thing because in the worldwide thing, American soccer is kind of a joke, at least on the men's side. So I'm thinking I got to go to Europe and just look through the leagues. I think that means I have to find a Premier League team. I have to find a Premier League team. Hopefully, I don't want to be called a bandwagon because I want to find a Premier League team that's good. So, I'm rooting for a good team. But I guess you could consider me a Bayern fan in the Bundesliga, but considering they win every year, it's kind of boring. So maybe I could find a Premier League team, get invested in that, try to get involved in that conversation. I've been trying, but this soccer has just not worked for me. Maybe this is the year that it happens.
The way I look at it, I picked all my teams in very weird ways, and I can easily say that none of them are the powerhouses of any of their sports. And so if I'm picking a soccer team, I'm rolling with the powerhouse. I'm taking whoever's 99 overall on FIFA. Okay. That's who I'm rolling with. I'm gonna take this opportunity and pick my Lakers or my Cowboys or whatever they may be. I want to pick that team.
All right. So yeah, I guess that just wraps up my resolutions for the year. Ian, it was great talking with you, man. I think this is gonna be the end of our show. Thank you guys for listening to the 3304 Sports Podcast. As always, Ian, you have anything else before we sign off?
I just want to say, thank all you guys for listening to this hodgepodge of, sports information coming out at you all at once. We hit a whole bunch of different types of spectrums. We hit the Bundesliga league, and we also hit college basketball. So we really, really did it all. And it was awesome doing this with you, and I look forward to doing it again.
Definitely, man. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. This is definitely a topic that it either could really work or it really couldn't. Hopefully you guys react with us on social media and interact with us and tell us whether or not you like this sort of thing. So we thank you for listening. We thank you for your support as always. For Ian Hatcher, I'm Daniel Steinbach, signing off on the 3304 Sports Podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Have a happy holidays and good health into the new year. Thanks, everyone.
Adios.